I'm here trying to build community, which is what this is all about. Community, for the most part, is our co-working space where we can all come together and support the founders that come up here. And also events like this where we can educate and inspire. I hate public speaking, by the way, so that's me. Our upcoming events. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our Luma account. Our events are all listed on there, and we are building out our programming for our events. We've had some requests from people, and we're getting to know what the community wants and needs. We want to be a resource, and if you have any ideas or any events that you would like to see us hold, then please let us know. There's two particular ones coming up, one in June, one in July, that we would love your attendance at and to spread the word. And again, these things are on Luma, and we would love you to RSVP and show up to those and show your support. We can't do anything without our sponsors and our supporters, so we're very thankful to them. We're always looking for more, so if you know of any, just reach out. And our supporters, people like you, people that spread the word, our friends, we love you being here. We're so happy that you're here, and we're happy that we're growing and gaining momentum. And because I want to get this over with, without further ado,
you guys are doing a great job.
Please, I would like to introduce the wonderful Dave Barkos.
Guys, thank you. This was Eliza. If she didn't say it, yeah. Eliza's phenomenal. Comes to us by way of Florida, reached out to me and said, I hear you building something up here and I want to be a part of it. And it's pretty amazing to have her come on and do what she's doing to just help this kind of thrive. So this has been really kind of turning into a group effort. So thank you so much for showing up. The reason we do it, startups need help. It's hard. We don't talk about it enough, right? And we don't talk about why it is such a crazy solo journey that we go on, and every day we kind of face that we think we're crazy for doing it. We think we aren't doing something right. We're chasing all these things, and every day we wake up, we rewrite the book, and that's part of the huge challenge. Is most founders that come out of working for a job. And so they think you approach it like a job. You don't approach it like an experiment. You don't approach it like everything is a sandcastle that you're going to remake at different times. And so you walk in with these assumptions about how you need to build structures and departments and everything else, and you kind of aim too far instead of the one foot in front of the other. And that's what community does, is it gets you working with those other people that are really close to where you are and to keep you on track, right? The accountability that happens. And so, yeah, this is why we did this. This is why we did it. I love this graph. It just kind of talks about this valley of despair when you start something and you're like really excited that this is going to be exactly everything you ever wanted. And my God, you're going to be rolling in cash and everything else. And then you start doing it and it gets hard and nobody's listening to you, and they don't understand it, and they argue that you're wrong. And there's all this kind of dynamic, and you just kind of get launched into this, tar pit of negativity and self-doubt and everything else. And it's really difficult to kind of pull that out, but you have to keep going. You have to learn in the process, but you have to keep going. And as you do, you start to come out of that. Really often you'll hear this called the valley of despair. Is just, that long period where you are you're not getting any traction. But something's there. Sorry, I reworked all these last night. But what we did is we said, North Bank, this is a model that's been in many other locations and organizations. An organization can step in and be a hub of the people that are building. And it does a couple of different things, right? It's not magic. I'm not recreating, not making something up. This has been done multiple times in multiple cities. And it means having events. It means pulling community together. It has programming so that you're learning as you're doing, right? All these pieces are things that we put together as part of North Bank. So if you haven't been here, if this is your first time, this is our space. This is our space, and it's made possible. We kind of glossed over it a little quickly, but the Vic and New Blueprint partners, and they're actually here today. So I want to give them a special round of applause for helping us make this happen. It's amazing. The Vic is a pretty special place right now. Vancouver and Clark County is seeing this incredible growth. It's been double-digit growth for the last 5 years, and it's really kind of leading the entire region. And it's a project like this that's kind of reimagining a bunch of what can happen here, right? And so if you want to find out what's going on, there's some, I don't even think we might have one of the posters up here, but there's incredible stuff that's going on, including townhouses and mixed-use retail, and a park was given back or sold back into the city. Just an amazing, amazing place. This whole campus is really kind of teeming with that energy. So it's exciting to be a part of and bring this kind of energy to that process. I love giving book recommendations. You see there's a library over there of books that I've kind of read through and that have kind of been formative. Because this is so hard, I think I'm the dumbest person in the room, and I want to find out from the smartest people in the room. So today I have one of the really, really great blessings and opportunities to announce one of the speakers of one of those books. Dave Parker has an amazing background, and I can't give enough of it. I didn't even do a good ChatGPT like bio for you, right? But you've been involved in startup in so many formative ways. And if you look at startup as kind of as an industry, he made a comment on a call a while back, is that part of the reason that we have so much trouble is because nobody recognizes exactly what it is. There's no definition at the federal, at the state level for what a startup actually is, because the difference between somebody who's starting a food cart or starting a boutique shop or even starting a regional chain is very different than somebody that's going to have 11 people or now even 2 to 3 people that's going to sell for a multiple billion-dollar exit, and the impact of that is just not understood. And so much of the legislature and thing that we're dealing with, we're fighting some of those headwinds too, because they just can't grok it. They're looking for voters, they're looking for constituents, they're looking for buy-in of those things. And founders are just generally heads down. But yeah, he's worked with Steve Case, Steve Blank, Brad Feld, for decades. This has been a thing. So really excited to bring him in. When I met him, we talked a little bit about his background, and something I didn't know, he quietly called himself a shug, which I hadn't heard the term, actually. I'm right here. We're 3 miles away. But his family, this is his grandfather's shop, has been in this area, has been part of the economy of this area for forever. This was 1911. 1911. This is, for those of you who don't recognize it, I think you said this was the Model T, or it's a Model T. When those things first, yeah, when they first came in, they came in boxes. You didn't get them. In the assembly line we all learned about, it didn't happen. He was there before it. So it's just been amazing. With that, I found the most embarrassing picture I could. Sorry, you're going to have to explain a little bit about what this is. But with that, I would love to bring up Dave Parker. I'm also going to have one of my board members, C3. We're going to tag team just a little bit. So if you haven't met C3, take a minute to find him and talk about him. He's got an amazing, the workshop that he's doing is basically talking about people about how to really leverage, how to make deals, right? We're in the meeting, we do this all day long, and we don't really understand, this disparity that happens between, your side and the other side. But he's got an amazing background through Intel Capital. I always call him the fixer. If you guys know Mr. Wolf, he takes care of it, and that's what he did for Intel Capital for years.
Yeah. So this workshop we're doing this month is something we've tested, tried, used for over 20 years. We've taught thousands of people, all different verticals. The punchline is deals aren't art, they're science. I used to get asked why my deals work and other people's fell apart. It's because I constructed them to actually have results and not just a signature. Our goal wasn't ink. It wasn't a term sheet you can announce on CNBC or call the New York Times. It was actually the product or the partnership or whatever. So it's a very, very simple process. I encourage you to come. It's also at night, so we're trying to get some folks in to have day jobs that are doing side hustles, and it will apply whether you're doing a license deal or a funding with the city or an acquisition or a movie deal. We've used it in every possible scenario. It's a very simple process. When I take you through it, you're going to go, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I've been skipping steps. So really, really simple, and I encourage you, please come.
Yeah, awesome, thanks. Dave, thank you. It's been amazing. I literally met, I think we met just a couple of, maybe a month ago or something on the WTIA call. And then met you with the latest cohort that they're launching.
Yeah, cohort 14? 14, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll tell you guys about the cohort program here in a bit too, because otherwise context will be lost. So I'll make sure I'll fill that in.
I was going to say,
I've had a chance to kind of research your background, but I'd love to kind of get, I call this a song stuck in my head, right? And it has been for years, but for you, it's been longer, and you've been playing at a different level. Steve Case and Steve Blank and all over.
Yeah. So grew up Washougal, Washington. So Clark County boy, Clark County family. The family's been here since, Oregon City since the 1880s. Wow. And you can guess the timing of when they came over. So something about an Oregon, there's a trail over there, I hear?
You guys made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all played that video game in school.
Yeah.
We know not a lot of people made it.
Yeah, exactly. So my grandfather was an entrepreneur. Consequently, my father was never an entrepreneur because he saw the wild craziness. So to the point of the assembly line didn't start until 1913. So 1911, they chipped pieces of the Model T out, and if you look at that photo, there's a whole bunch of barrels on the right. That's the gas station. Because you think about the charging infrastructure for Tesla now, there was no infrastructure for gas stations then either. So he closed that business too early. We don't know much about the backstory. He passed away before I was born. But he started the first phone company in Camas, Washington. And then sold that business too early or closed it too early, we don't really know. And finished running a local bodega in there. And so, yeah, my family's, we're local. So I moved to the University of Washington, went to the University of Washington on a golf scholarship. That was the only way I was going to college, or I was going to Clark College. Some of you have seen the clock tower in Clark, and my dad's name is actually on the clock tower because he was student body president when they built that in the 50s. So yeah, it's fun to be home. It's always good to be back. And when I leave you guys today, I'm going to go have lunch with my sister down at the new waterfront. So I'm super excited to go see that. And so for the startup world, I just launched company number 6. It's actually in your lane. We're helping founders prepare to exit. The prior 5 companies, of those 5, I was fortunate to sell 3 of them. No unicorns. I own a beach somewhere. I've got a couple friends who do that too, and it's nice to have friends who have boats and planes. I don't have any of those. Yeah, and they're that's a different topic around redomiciling from Washington State these days. But so yeah, I did 5 startups. I was fortunate to sell 3 of them. Did sell-side merger and acquisition work for about a decade and venture capital investing for about a decade. So invested around 85 companies and sold around 25 companies. So yeah, I've been around this block, and it's always a challenge for me around founders, around this concept of information asymmetry. There's a lot that we as founders don't know because we're heads down building stuff, and we forget that the guy sitting across the table has done it 100 times, right? And it doesn't take anything away from them. It's just an information asymmetry thing, and that happens at kind of every step of the founder's journey. Like, hey, we incorporated. Like, how many of you are still LLCs? Anybody? Okay. So in prep for selling the company, you want to be a C Corp because you can take advantage of QSBS, Qualified Small Business Stock. Has to have the clock has to happen for 5 years. There's a difference between paying regular income tax when you sell it versus 0 capital gains tax. Like the huge difference in the outcome for founders. That is the entire founder journey in many cases. So, and having made so many of those mistakes, I always say that the wounds have healed, but I'm still twitchy at times when you're talking about a venture capital round or a down round, or how do I do terms, or how do I price the deal? And a lot of times we as founders think that some of this stuff is a calculus versus a heuristic, and there's just tons of heuristics in our world. So
I think we're seeing such a big, I won't say it's a pushback, but we're starting to recognize bootstrapping versus, taking on equity. And I think you've seen a ton of that as well. And are there, characteristics of a company that should be paying more attention to that? Or is it founder preference? Or are you finding...
I think it really depends. The idea of should you take venture capital or not has a lot to do with the stage of the business you're in and what type of business you're building. Like a few of you were talking this morning about your fundamentally services business. And I have empathy for you if you're trying to sell to startups. Good God, that you're doing the Lord's work. Probably not going to make any money at it. I love the reference to funded startups. Good luck with that one too.
Yeah, right. Must be a short list.
Yeah, founders don't have any money to sell. It's part of the reason we created the founder cohort program so the Washington Tech Industry Association is a statewide tech association that supports, we really are supporting builders, right? One of our pivots in our language is we're moving from founders to builders, because I think fundamentally as we move into the AI age, AI is going to be your co-founder in a lot of cases, and we're going to see a lot less requirement for capital. So it really depends on where you want to take the company. The reason to take venture capital is only if your company is going to grow disproportionate in value faster if you do. And I think a lot of us as first-time founders look at venture capital and say, well, it feels like a badge of honor or success. And the answer is maybe, but probably not.
Well, it's debt.
Yeah.
You
have to pay it
when
back.
I talk to people, they celebrate it like it's a milestone on the same level as a product launch.
Yeah.
Like going
Or
into
revenue.
beta or raising $50 million. And I'm like, when you buy a house, you don't go out and tell all your friends you just took out a $500,000 loan from the bank. You tell them you bought a house and you show them pictures of the house. So
Yeah.
why do you do when you start a business? But it is this crazy litmus test of, I think people view it as a validation.
Totally.
I convinced somebody to write a check
Well,
for
and
that
especially
amount.
since we launched with a product that we were so uncertain of,
Right.
and it gets worse, by the way, because once you get some level of commercial success and the private equity guys start calling you and you've been out pitching for money for so long, you're like, people recognized me. They called me. So bad news there. Usually it's a first-year associate who's been tasked with making 100 dials a day
Right.
to talk to somebody who's been in the press to say, our partner would love to meet with you. And then you're going to hear back from the private equity firm that you're too small and you're too early, right? And it's one of those weird dynamics in the business that it keeps it. Again, the information asymmetry is all about how do you make this more fair for founders has been a consistent theme for me.
I want to come back to the stages too, because I think one of the big pieces in trajectory, right, was talking about your journey through Up Global, through Techstars with the startup weekend, and the kind of the stem to stern view of how you would help them, right? And I think that also addresses that most founders don't understand where they are on the journey, right? They're not concentrating on what's right in front of them. Right. They're concentrating on, I'm going to do this. And I think that what we do is we concentrate on something that you're planning for a future date and a time that you're not addressing your main concerns right now. So maybe talk a little bit about what that journey looks like a little bit more and how you make those decisions at the early stage.
So first off, how many of you are founders in the room? Okay. How many of you are doing services, predominantly people are part of the delivery of what you're doing? Okay. And the rest of you are product, you're a mix, you got both, product and services, okay. So the concept here is, one of the things is knowing your lane based on what you're trying to prove. If you're in the services businesses, typically somebody is selling the same service you're selling, right? Publishing, you have an alternative, right? We should talk later because I'm working on book 2, maybe book 3. But in the services business, I'm not competing against what I call product market fit. Well, it's not what I call it, it's what the industry calls it. In the case of the services businesses, the question is, will I buy service from you versus somebody else? In the case of the product business, you're creating a product from scratch that nobody has ever done before. So the real question is, you have one gate you have to get through, and your one sprint for that gate is, will somebody buy this product for reasonable economics, right? So there's a cost to build it, there's a cost to sell it, and there's a reasonable return, right? Will somebody pay that price for the product in the stage that it's at? And that's the only gate that matters, is to get a product market fit. So by contrast, if you're in the services business and Dave and I become an accounting firm, right? It's Dave and Dave's accounting. We know you're buying accounting from somebody else. The question is, will you buy from us, right? So in that case, and can we recruit other accountants, right? So in our case, and Drucker was right about this one, but I'm going to tell you something, and Drucker is the gospel according to business, right? Is culture eats strategy for breakfast, except when it doesn't. Because we're selling services. Our culture matters a ton, right? Because we have to go recruit other accountants and have you buy our services. In startup at product, culture doesn't matter. Product market fit matters. Because if you don't get to product market fit, the company will die. So, and you may have great culture and the company will still be dead. Now, if you have shitty culture, we can fix it. When you get to 20 people and we fund it and we can like take care of those things. But those gates are so different in your journey, and the stage appropriate capital and intellectual information you get from a programming standpoint matters. So I remember coming to a program I've done a lot of work in the Middle East over the last 4 years and probably supported 800 or 900 founders in the Middle East. You know what? They're exactly like you. In Asia, exactly like you. So the silly photo is from, I was on stage at, anybody heard of Entrepreneurs Organization? Okay, so EO is a 38-year-old organization with 20,000 members in 87 countries and 250 chapters, and I was the CEO of EO. And I thought it was my community because we use the same language. It's a completely different community. So 90% of the businesses in Vistage, in particular where the data comes from for this, the quote, are manufacturing, construction, and services. A lot like those of you who raised your hand for services. My world is tech innovation, right? And the innovation economy, and people are out like, I have an idea. I was on a call this morning with a woman who's creating a new technology stack for small and medium law firms, right? And I'm like, that's the world I live in, right? You either get to product market fit. Right. In venture, we dangle a little carrot in front of you and we're like, get to product market fit, pivot or die.
Right.
Right? In the Vistage EO YPO world, there's literally hundreds of thousands of coaches and certified coaches. There's not in the venture world. And the reason is there's no money, right? So either you get to product market fit, right, you pivot or you die. But what we realized on the WTIA founder cohort program is we wanted to support the founders because we like that founder. That idea may not work. And by the way, the math on that is very consistent, right? If you look at the number of startups that fail, super high numbers, right? Most of you and your spouses, you know, at some point your spouse says, I can't help you make payroll again this month. You need to stop talking to me about it and find somebody that can help you, which is why community exists, right? It's also why when you finally find your tribe, you're like, oh my God, I found my community, right? And I'm not going to leave them because it's such a lonely solo sport otherwise. But those are just two very different gates. On this, if you're doing services, you have to find somebody who's willing to buy your service than somebody else. But if you're doing product, you have to get to product market fit, and that is your number one gate, right? And it's not easy because you have to do almost everything at some stage because you can't hire people to do everything else you want to do.
Yeah, I want to double click on that, and I'm also hearing a couple of people saying a little bit louder for the back of the room.
Okay.
We don't have our PA system yet. Sorry.
I'll be loud.
Product market fit. I think it's been in, you know, there's a mythology around it, right? Because we always talk about founders that are talking to individuals, and they'll say, they say it's such a good idea. They love the idea, right? And so we look at this social proof, but the conversation we had about the metrics that you're putting in place and talk about it, there's a real metric around it. There's science around it.
Yeah, I wish I had articulated it as well in the book, by the way. So what happened? So I released the book during this little thing called a pandemic. So there was no book tour until I started going to the Middle East and doing webinars, and so everything was a webinar. And at one point it was super frustrating. So product market fit, I defined who defined it in the book, somebody in Silicon Valley, and then the age-old one in Silicon Valley in venture capital was the VCs are like, well, we'll know it when we see it, which is the Supreme Court's definition of pornography.
I was going to say.
Right? super helpful. So after doing a few hundred seminars, I was like, listen, product market fit is math. And that's all it is, right? And I'll tell you what, as an investor, I can sit down and look at your numbers and say, oh, you have it or you don't. So here's the math. I haven't published this, by the way. I've written about it. So it's not like I've kept it secret, but I wish I had articulated it as well in the book. It's 5 things, right? Is the traffic at the top of your website trending up in the right direction? And these are all trending topics. I'm going to give you 4 that should trend up, 1 that should trend down. Traffic, number 1. If nobody's looking for what you're doing, you have a problem, right? I'll tell you about some of my failures, and they all have the same theme, right? Which is, I invented something that nobody knew existed or was searching for. Well, guess what? You can't do inbound marketing on a product that no one's ever seen before because they don't know it exists, right? But it's super innovative. Nobody cares. So your only choice in that case is to do outbound sales, not inbound marketing, right? So is my traffic going up? Now, if I'm doing outbound sales, it should be that people are coming to my site after I do the call with them to validate what I told them we do. Or I can buy ads if I'm doing marketing, and I can pull people into my site. So that's traffic, number 1. Google's really good at this one. Congratulations. The next one is leads as a percentage of traffic. In the book, we looked at 2,564. I'm a little retentive, or some might say OCD, but I'm not rocking back and forth on the couch, so it's fine. So we tracked these companies over a 5-year longitudinal study to discover there was 14 revenue models used in tech. I hope what you're building is unique. How you're making money, not unique. After 10 years of following the data, still not unique.
Innovating on a business model is not your innovation.
That is, no. And by the way, anybody remember Groupon? Okay, anybody remember the number of copies of Groupon?
Yeah.
Even when the business model is innovative, it is not defensible. Because there were dozens and dozens and dozens of copies, just like Groupon, only better, but for Vancouver, right? And because they all had a local proximity basis. So traffic, number 1. Number 2 is leads, right? So there should be, in looking at those 2,654 companies, we looked at all the ones that failed. 2 consistent themes. If you got to their website, there was no call to action, and there was no price. Now, ice cream could cause forest fires, maybe, but I'm just saying no call to action, no price, right? So traffic, leads, customers as a percentage of leads, right? That reflects the closing ratio. So what of the people who came to our site, how many said they were interested? How many demos did we do? How many proposals did we send? How many of those people who were interested became customers, right? You with me so far? Last one is average contract value or average revenue per customer. Is that trending up or not? It should trend up as your product gets better. You're in the publishing business. As your product gets better, you should be able to charge those customers more. Super area of concern for us as founders because we finally find product market fit, and now Dave's telling me to raise my price. And the answer is yes, I am, right? Which we're super uncomfortable with because we've been doubting the product for so long anyway. Mm-hmm. So I now have 4 that are trending up. The last one should trend down, which is time to close. When you have those 5 factors, you have product market fit. It's the magic of compound interest. If you have 1 or 2 of them, congratulations. They are vanity metrics without all of them. As an investor, right, we would sit down and look with companies early on, right? I had a great chapter of my investing life was working for a fund called Fearless Fund out of Atlanta, Georgia. Some of you guys may have heard of the affirmative action lawsuit between UNC and Harvard a few years ago. A month after that was settled, that same group of lawyers sued a fund out of Atlanta, Georgia, because we were investing exclusively in women of color. And because we weren't investing in white women, we were being racist. Crazy how the world flipped on its head. We had invested in 35 companies that were women of color founded companies. Half were in consumer packaged goods, half were in technology. The most founded as a percentage of a group and the least funded of any group, right? 3.1% of all venture capital in the last 25 years has gone to white guys named Dave. Not joking. 3.4% went to white
We
guys
do have
named
2
Jim.
Daves on the panel out of 3 people.
Just
So
saying. I used to say middle-aged white guy, but maybe not so much middle-aged. What's that? Should you change your name? Don't do it.
No.
0.8% goes to all people of color in the venture world, right? So it's just statistics. It's just part of it is how do you as an investor, I want to invest in things I want to invest in. As a private investor, I should get to use my capital for the things that I want to use my capital for, right? Which gets a little crazy, but we'll leave the state issues to people with higher pay grades than me. So product market fit, it's just math, right? And if you have trouble with it, I would sit down and look at it and say, like,
when
here's
do
the
you
math.
see? So this begs a question: how do you delineate between product market fit and scale? Because the latter part of your metrics sounded a lot more like the beginning of scale.
It's totally that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the challenge is one of the things you see with venture-backed companies is a lot of companies will try to scale too early, and not a lot, it's a percentage, but you'll see one of the mistakes. So one of the companies we invested in at one point, by the way, I am loath to replace the CEO. Like, you have to really not get it to get replaced as a CEO. And one of the companies we invested in, it just kept being like, we're going after $5 trillion markets. I'm like, no, you're not. You don't have the money to go after $100 million market, let alone $5 trillion markets, right? And it wasn't a matter of, wasn't the idea good? Was it expandable? Like, could you see how you got there? And the answer is, yeah, if you're so pitching in Silicon Valley and pitching here is very different. Pitching in Silicon Valley is, here is how we're getting to the top of Everest.
Right.
Right? Here people write smaller checks. They want to make sure you can get to base camp.
Yeah.
And from base camp, then the investor draws the conclusion, oh, you're going to go from base camp to you're going to try to go to the top? But if I'm writing a $50,000 check and not a $5 million check, base camp is still hard, right? So you really have to nail the things for product market fit before you go after scale. Scaling is an entirely different investor, by the way, and it's an entirely different team if you as the CEO don't scale with the organization. Because the only time I see the CEOs not scaling is when they're not learning at the same pace that the organization is learning. Then that's when CEOs risk getting replaced.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think I always talk about kind of the theater of the mythology of startup, right? We walk in without that experience, having done it before or having done it, and we see Shark Tank and we see everybody says, oh, an investor will do this, right? We walk in with these employee mentalities about, I have an idea, fund me to make my idea prove that it's going to be what I say it's going to be. And that's an employee mentality, right? That's where you go to your boss and say, I think we can, they're what?
And you ask for budget.
And you ask for budget, right? And so we approach it really, really differently. And I think that's one of the main things that I kind of grapple with when I talk to early stage entrepreneurs and breaking that mythology to say, that's not the game you're in, right? This is the game we're in.
There's some great
Research out of, I think it's out of Virginia or Virginia Tech around effectuation thinking and the idea of, there's probably 4 or 5 categories that make an entrepreneur. There's this super interesting topic that I got asked to come speak at the University of Washington last year around like, it was one of those nice asks over a holiday party where you're like, hey, would you come speak to my class? I'm like, sure. And then 2 weeks before, I said, like, what do you want me to speak on? He's like, I want you to speak on, how do you know if you're an entrepreneur? And I'm like, well, how long do I have? Like the whole semester? Because that's kind of a big topic. But so effectuation thinking is one of the concepts that has a good academic bias, which is founders are great at starting with what they have, not with what they need. And the difference between like, okay, I have this, right? If you remember Princess Bride, what are our assets, right? Why didn't you say we had a trench coat or whatever the right coat was, right? Yeah. So I have to start with what I have. So that's one of the continuum, right? Another continuum is grit, right? And your ability to stick with it and be persistent. Now, sometimes that means some of the founders drive off a cliff, right? Because they don't know how to read the signals, at least first time around. One of the concept is called locus of control, right? So the concept there is I'm a victim on one end of the continuum. I don't control anything. And on the other end of the continuum, you have I'm a reality distortion field, Steve Jobs, right? And all of us as founders live over here. The men founders live slightly over farther than the female founders, right? Because all of us, if you're building a product, are like, I can build something no one's ever built before. So we're all a little bit on this side of the continuum. The founder that I meet who won't listen, who's way over there, who's like, we've heard from our customers this isn't what they want, and we're going to build it anyway because we know better. Because we read Henry Ford said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right.
And I'm like, Henry did not have the internet.
That's right.
There's a few things, and I come from the family that had one of those. So
founders come to me and kind of cite the Steve Jobs thing, and arguably they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and all I can say at some point is, if you were Steve Jobs, we'd know it by now, right? The force of nature that he was. You shouldn't try and model yourself after those individuals. And these models, I find we're shrinking our models of success because we don't hear enough founder stories of what's really going on inside of successful startups.
Yep. Or if you're trying to do 2 startups at one time because you're convinced you're like Steve Jobs, I would just tell you as an investor and having 25 exits under my belt, stop. Like go get successfully exited in your first one,
Right.
and give to philanthropy and do what you want to do do what you want to do, and then start the second one. Because the fact is I've done this 6 times. I still couldn't run multiple companies at the same time. There's just no way, because you're doing too much in the early days by yourself.
Yeah. I heard at one point, I think it was Mark Andreessen, there was something he was talking about a solo founder, right? The idea that if you can't get, that was a gate for them, basically, is that if you can't get, that you can't get somebody else to come along with you, it's evidence that there isn't enough market traction or belief or the proof of where you're headed.
Think about your co-founder as your first sale. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands with this one. So if you have more than 2 co-founders, I'm a little concerned. How many people remember the name of the 3rd co-founder of Apple? Yeah, scratch your head a little bit. How about the 3rd co-founder of Google? There was actually 5. So Brian Lent was number 5. He left Google and went back to Stanford to get his PhD. Had some very successful exits in Seattle. I think two of his 3 were very successful. None of them were Google, right? But my point is there's splitting the pie too many ways is always a concern. As an investor, I see a 50-50 cap table and I'm like, oh, the first hard decision you had to make and you still wouldn't make it.
Right.
Like it's not that it's not retractable, but ultimately as an investor, I'm like, somebody has to make the decision.
Somebody's 51.
Somebody's got to be, it could be 50.1 for all I care, but somebody has to be able to, like, don't kick the can on the first hard decision.
Is that a Pacific Northwest thing too? Did you see more people that are like, fair and equitable, want to be into partners, therefore?
The day you incorporate as a Delaware C Corp is the best day of your company in the life cycle of your company. It's unicorns and rainbows and butterflies and everything's perfect, and then the hard shit starts. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little prone to profanity at times because this is a hard business, right? So
It is, and I don't think anybody gives enough straight advice. I think there's enough of patting people on the back and saying, this is a journey. So I appreciate it. I think I mentioned it before. I always want to give people a glimpse behind the curtain, right? Something that they don't see.
If you want compliments, play golf, because people will say, that was a great shot. But in your startup, you're not going to get a lot of that, right? It's worse than a job, and you're not going to get a lot of it at a job. So... Can we go back to the WTIA thing real quick?
I was going to say, can we get local? Let's talk about WTIA and the state, and then maybe segue to how we coerced you to come down here.
So Washington
and talk
Tech
about...
Industry Association is an organization that's here to support you all, where we provide services for smaller businesses around healthcare and 401k and kind of the back office services that you can't afford to buy yourself at reasonable scale. We also provide lobbying services, which most of you don't care about at this point, but you probably will starting in the next session.
Unless you're building a ferry service.
And we care about it from the start. So we've been running a program there called the Cohort Program. It was something that the then CEO and I decided 8 years ago we would put forward as a twice-a-year program. Has about 25 companies in it per cohort. That group, so we've had 351 companies come through there in the last 7.5 years. They've raised collectively over $400 million. Now, one of them raised 65, so but it still not so bad from that standpoint. So it's free. We don't take any equity. It was our way of thinking about how do we pay it forward in the state in a way that, if you see, Silicon Valley is so unique in the world because we were at the same company at PayPal, and we became part of the PayPal mafia, and we invested in each other's companies. So that concept of recycled capital is super important about making a startup ecosystem strong. So you can apply to it the next cohort program. It starts twice a year. We just started the most recent cohort program. In January, we'll be launching a new program that is designed for helping companies on the scaling up side, because once you get to $1 million and you get through that product market fit gate, you have a whole different set of questions you're going to ask. And by the way, comes out of my EO experience as well, because when I ran my first company and we got to $1 million, I was asking an entirely different set of questions than when I got to $35 million. It's an entirely different set of questions.
Yeah.
Right, so the goal of the new program that we're going to launch in January, we haven't branded it yet, but it'll still be with the WTIA, is really helping. I'm super frustrated with the narrative right now, being a Washington native, and we want to help 1,000 companies in Washington State scale between now and 2035. That's our goal,
Okay.
right? I don't think it's a BHAG. We've got 351 already. Getting 1,000 new ones isn't going to be that hard, but it's still a BHAG in the state because there's a lot of negative narrative in our state right now about why you should move somewhere else and be an entrepreneur. And honestly, I don't blame you all, but I'm a complete and total homer because I grew up in Washougal, and the answer is I'm here until the end, right? But I'm not running for political office because I'm completely unelectable.
And I'll say a couple of people have asked me how I met Dave and everything else, right? Part of what I've been doing as North Bank and what we've been doing as an organization is reaching out to the state, right? We are part of Portland Metro, and it has been we're a shadow of the Portland Metro, right? It has been a bedroom community. It's been growing up as a city. The double-digit growth that we've been having has been phenomenal. We all felt it if we lived here, and that means that things change. And part of what that means is we need to engage deeper inside of state resources and inside of state organizations, because the high tent pole of Seattle is hard to compete with. We can't in a certain way, right? And I think WTIA is committed to that, to reaching out to other areas, whether it's Spokane or Tri-Cities or Bellingham or anything else, right?
Especially when we look at the 1,000 scaling companies between now and 2035, our approach to it is going to be, let's go talk to the cities and the jurisdictions that want help.
Right.
Because I don't know what to do about Seattle right now. It's super frustrating to me. It's not something I live in Woodinville. I'm in Snohomish County. Right, so there's things for me that are like, but I'm also tired of complaining about it, because that's not my world. My world is go do hard shit and change the world. And ultimately, you know, my goal was to leave the Seattle ecosystem better than I found it 25 years ago. We're way better, but at the same time, everybody's like, well, we're not Silicon Valley, and we have a chip on our shoulder. I will tell you, Vancouver, Canada is like, well, we're not Seattle.
Right.
Right? And you guys are like, well, we're not Portland, right? And the answer is we all have a chip on our shoulder, get over it, and go change things. And because I think there's a positive narrative to be like, this is a great place to build a company. We have great technologists. Access to capital has always been hard. Yeah. We've complained about lack of venture capital in Washington State for the 30 years I've been doing it. And everybody, the new folks I talk to that are now having the same discussion we had 20 years ago are like, well, you know, access to capital is really hard here. I'm like, that's not new, right? Let's at least come up with a new thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make a little quick transition, and not to put anybody directly on the spot, Senator, because this was a tough conversation to kind of walk into as well. But we have some people. We're talking a little bit about the political scene and about what's been going on. We've got some people I just noticed. Jordan Bolt, if you don't know him, he's the local president of CREDC. Incoming president. He was our speaker last month, and it's phenomenal about the kind of the momentum that's been going on here and what he's doing to lean into it. Another special guest is Senator Paul Harris, who walked in as well in the back. And so to kind of do an awkward, strange transition, I'd love Senator Harris, if there's a couple of words, love to give you a chance to come up and say something.
Oh, sure. Lots of room on the couch.
Yeah, please.
Good to see you. Yeah. Dave.
Thank you so much.
And I don't know, Chris. Glad to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, it's been a pretty striking conversation, and you're from this area, recently elected.
You're in
the
the
Senate,
17th.
So that's right.
This is in the 17th, and I just live actually about in the old section of Cascade Park, which is like 10 or 15 blocks that direction.
That's
where
great.
my last
That's
house
great.
was.
Oh, okay. And I'm still used to this being Hewlett Packard. Sorry. I mean, I've been here a long time,
Yeah.
way too long. So
Yeah.
kind of want to talk about whatever you want to talk about regarding, do you want me to discuss last session, what I see coming up next session,
Yeah, I think the thing that we really
how we love high tech or don't love high tech? We actually love high tech. We better. Yeah.
Well, I think so for 25 years, one of the things we talked about is that new companies under 5 years in age, especially in the tech sector, are disproportionately create jobs. That's where it's not small businesses, it's not large businesses. If you look at all the layoffs, it's definitely not large businesses or big tech.
Probably not. Yeah.
I think one of the challenges we suffer from is that, in case you guys don't know it yet, you're not big tech.
Right.
So we have
Aspirationally, maybe, but
well, aspirationally, all of us live there, but we have this techlash thing going on. How do you think we help the legislature and the folks in Olympia understand that we're not big tech. We're just trying to get businesses started and employ people and create a better life for our families.
So we rolled back capital gains a little this last session. With that, we introduced, I call it an income tax. I call it a millionaire's tax. I'm a moderate Republican. I have no home anymore, so I just want to declare who I am. You can look me up. I
appreciate that.
I think we need to really remind people how important tech is in our state. I think we feel like the state has done so well in tech, and just in general, our state has done extremely well in creating jobs. You kind of take it for granted, maybe, and think, 9.9 tax on a millionaire probably won't impact anything, but I think it really will.
It does indeed.
Huh?
It does indeed.
And
Absolutely, especially here, because we actually were the benefactors of the exodus from Multnomah County. So a whole bunch of people moved up, really liked the area, started to get pretty settled, and then went, shit, maybe I should have gone to Texas.
Some of them are going to Texas.
know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I heard from a small business. I get emails all the time. I heard from a small business, local business. I don't know how many are familiar with Big Owls. Anybody familiar with Big Owls?
Yep.
They're in the paper today, actually. A big screen doing the soccer thing. But Big Owls reached out to me, and Big Owls started here, has 12 other stores. It's not high tech. It's a fun place for your family to go. But he had his holding company in the state of Washington. So all of his S Corp, everything came into Washington State. And Department of Revenue feels like all that income now is our income, or our income.
Right.
And Big Owls disagrees with that adamantly, and I actually agree with him. And he says, Paul, do I really have to take my corporation, my holding company, and move it to Idaho? Are you going to make me do that? I said, well, I hope not. I hope calmer minds will weigh in. But that tax, to be honest with you, passed. I'm a senator. Was in the House for 16 years, been in the Senate now for 2 years. It's a completely different climate than it was 16 years ago. I mean, politically and in our state.
Sure.
16 years ago, the word income tax was a dirty, dirty word. And in fact, what you said is you moved here because we didn't have an income tax.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this really sends a really bad message to a lot of people, no matter if it's a millionaire's tax or not, because people are going to leave.
Yeah.
We offered an amendment on the floor that let's keep it in $1 million, and I think some of my members on my side would have voted for it. They wouldn't accept the amendment. And what I've learned in Olympia, when things get tough, kind of in business, I ran my own business. It was really interesting to listen to. I started my own business, took it from nothing to $4 million. I thought I was rocking and rolling. Then 2008 hit, and we weren't all rocking and rolling anymore.
Yeah.
So we just have got to remember who we are and how we got here. And I think not having an income tax is super important.
Yeah.
So let's. I'm going to jump forward because one of the things that I found for us as founders is we get into builder mindset. You guys all recognize this, right? We just build, and we're like, if it's really bad, tell me about it, right? And historically, the answer has been, yeah, it was bad, but it wasn't really bad. And my observation in this session is, whoa, that was really bad.
That was the worst session my daughter says, and my wife says, you always say it's a bad session. Says, no, that was a bad session. And I'll be honest with you, this next session is actually going to be worse.
Yeah.
Because how we balanced the budget, and none of you would do this in your own business, but how we balanced this budget is I call it one-time money. So we looked around for one-time money in our state, and we took $4 billion out of an overfunded retirement program. And I'll be honest, it was overfunded, but that wasn't all our money. That was some of the personal money that was put in, and it was state and county money that went in. But we took it all. So we took $4 billion out of that. We took $800 million out of the rainy day fund. We took $200 million away from data centers that we made promises to, that if they would come into our state, a tax incentive, that we would honor that tax incentive and we would help you. We took $200 million immediately from them and said, thank you. That, to me, of all the things that we did, was probably the worst, because we made a promise to somebody. This you can tell I'm really old school. We made a promise to somebody, and we said we would do something, and we reneged on that. Not only did we renege on it, we went in and took the money. It wasn't like we're going to do it tomorrow. No, we're doing it today. And then we raided every fund that there was, and we took another $375 million out of the Public Works Trust Fund. This is all one-time money. The millionaire's tax brings in $3.5 billion in 2029 is when we start collecting it.
If it gets passed. If it survives.
Well, I'm going to say it stays, but we immediately hired 300 state employees at $500 million to run that program. So now it brings in $3 billion. So I am really concerned about this next session because we're already in trouble. Oh, and we only anticipated 2.5 growth in state government this next year. So we have to look out 4 years to balance. So the next 3 years, we anticipated 2.5% growth in state government. I could show you the graph that shows you.
When the lines don't cross.
When they don't grow. Yeah.
Well, no, this is just utter insanity.
Flashbacks. I got graphs.
So state government last year was 11.5% growth. The 2 years before that, it was 15% growth.
Yeah.
So to balance it, we just said arbitrarily, we're only going to grow 2.5% next year and the year after and the year after. Yeah, this next session is going to be really, really difficult. Because what I forgot to say is what I've learned in Olympia, the hardest thing to do is actually sit down and discuss a budget and actually say we're not going to raise taxes. Because the easiest thing to do in Olympia is actually just raise taxes. It really is. That's far easier than to sit down and have difficult discussions and figure out what we're going to fund, what are our priorities of government. Because that would take actual kind of in business, really,
That's right.
Work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we say, the hard thing about hard things, right? We talked about it as well, right? These founders are facing some of the big challenges, and the big challenges hit when you have to dig in underneath that thing. And the easy answer, like you say, raising taxes.
So maybe we flip this.
Yeah.
Because you got a room full of entrepreneurs, really bright people that want to build futures.
Yeah.
Why should they stay? Why shouldn't these people go home and start surfing the internet for a better place? Give them the pitch on why this is a great place to start a business.
Well, I hope.
So far,
Well, so I loved what you said because, this is my home. I mean, yesterday, I mean, I love it here. I love our summers here. Do I like rain? I kind of do, actually. Or I wouldn't stay here. I think there's problems everywhere. And I loved what you said. I think the easiest signature gathering that the state of Washington has ever done was on the income tax that we just passed. They gathered 400,000 signatures in 2.5 weeks. It will be on your ballot. It was like raining signatures. So that was super simple. Will it pass? Will we rescind this? I think we will. I hope we will. And then I hope we sit down and really have a dialogue on, what we want our state to look like. What is the proper... I was called out because I actually believe that Idaho, Utah, some other places where I go to quite often have a small income tax. They have across the board taxes. And one of the Democrats called me out in a Zoom meeting and says, well, Paul, do you believe in an income tax? I says, if you would regulate some other things, like reduce my property taxes, do a couple of other things, and introduce some small, moderate taxes, I probably would be okay with that. And then they said, well, that doesn't bring us in more money, Paul. And I go, well, that shouldn't be our incentive all the time. Why don't we just actually look at controlling our own growth? If we had moderate taxes, you might disagree with me, but I think a small income tax, 2 or 3%, lower my property taxes. Hey, how about lowering the sales tax, which we said, you'll hear a lot from the controlling party, or however you want to put it, that we have a regressive tax system. I think we do for those that don't make a lot of money. I get that. But when you offer to reduce the sales tax 1% and they said no, that we need more money, I mean, we did nothing to address regressivity in our tax structure this last year. All we did is add a tax. We didn't cut any taxes anywhere. People on lower incomes aren't really getting, if you're really low income, you're getting some working family child connection credits. But in general, if you're not really getting a break anywhere. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we just need to control spending.
I think what I hear out of both you two is it's worth fighting for.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And it's worth fighting for in what they're doing, right? The room that's here is building something on their own, and they have the tax implications. They have the living, tax, those pieces, but the headwind that gets created at these later stages shouldn't be stopping them now either, right? It's like, yeah, we got to pay attention, but the same way, the Techstars stack of Startup Week and Startup Weekend and Next and everything else was progressively getting them to pay attention at the appropriate stage when they should. How much should we be focusing on these larger issues? What does this storm cloud look like?
Yeah, I think the thing that we learned last session, in full transparency, Amy works with me at WTIA. I'm on the board there. I wasn't on the board when I went down to lobby in Olympia, which was a little awkward because they're like, "You're Dave Parker and you're with," and I'm like, "I'm not with anybody. I'm just
a good old
I'm
person.
just here trying to make Washington better."
I'm effing Dave Parker.
So exactly, which nobody cares. But so I would say get on the email list of like, hey, if you're building here in Washington State, you need to know what's going on, not just in session, but in between sessions. One of the things we were able to do with the qualified small business stock thing was to get a bunch of people to weigh in on the nay category versus just the people who are getting paid to say, like, we work at a think tank and we think this is really great. And so we had a bunch of folks who were like, I'm starting a business here and I left Amazon, or I'm starting a business here and I still want to, like, for me, the answer is, I'm 5 generations of Washingtonians and this is my home. And I'm having a first grandchild in September, and I want it to be his home too, right? And it frustrates me when I hear friends talking about, well, we're talking about redomiciling, and I'm like, right? And a lot already have. By the way, the limited partners for funds have already left, but it makes it tougher to invest in funds here because I have a capital gains tax I have to worry about, and I can split my time at a different place, and I don't have to. And I get it. So the challenge you have is that as some of the folks in Olympia, not you, some of the folks in Olympia are going after people with $1 million plus. By the way, it's coming down. And those people with more than $1 million in assets can easily leave or keep their house here and go somewhere else. So at some point, it's coming down, right? And I think that, to your point, I'm actually fine with just call it what it is and change the Constitution, but put it in front of people for a vote. And if that's what the people decide, then that's what the people decide. Sure. But again, I'm probably not ever going to be a politician for all those reasons I just stated.
You said it too. You said, founders start from, this is the reality of where we are, right? And what we have as an asset, not bitch about where things are and what they do. We want to, we build stuff. We want to fix stuff. So I think that's been huge. But
so I'd reach out. How many are in this district? How many live right here? Okay. So I'm your senator, but those that you're not, reach out to your local state rep, senator. We're all the same.
In between session, by the way.
And
yeah. We have time to talk to you, not during session when you're super slammed.
Oh, I don't care. Anytime.
No, you care. So
I don't care, because I think just really weigh in and do a personal email. Don't cut and paste something. Tell them what your issue is, and just I don't think I'm unusual. I read my emails every morning. I get between 50 and 60 every morning. Most of them, 10 of them are usually an issue from a constituent that, there's some gut-wrenching issues out there. I mean, I'll be honest, there's some people that are hurting, absolutely. But I don't think we just really need to be cognizant of what we're doing and the impact.
I think you hit on some really good themes. I mean, one of the things, founders, entrepreneurs, they believe they can be successful. They all believe at some point they're going to be rich, that they've got $1 billion idea. So they want to know when they get there, they're not going to be jeopardized for it. And then at the same time, they're all bootstrapped and struggling and make hand to mouth. So you got it on both ends. And I think there's a really dangerous precedent that I'm seeing now. It was south of us. Now it seems to be creeping up here, this eat the rich mentality of, well, let's make somebody else pay for it. And I think that's why you see so many signatures.
The narrative, I think, though, that we have to help, there's things you can help with, right? So again, I'm a big fan in that continuum we talked about locus of control. I'm a victim versus I'm completely delusional, right? I'm over here closer to delusional, right? Now, is that realistic or real? I don't know. Don't really care. Because I'm a founder and that's what I do. I fix hard things, right? So I want to get in front of some of these things before we go into the next one. I think it's important that you be on an email list that you can get a notification of what's going on that could impact you. I think that the thing that changed for me in this last session is we went from like, oh yeah, that's not very good, to like, there's 1,800 bills, something like that. 1,800. So
They'll ChatGPT.
We didn't even chat.
I think
we didn't chat about AI, and we didn't chat.
No, there's a bunch of stuff we
didn't.
didn't talk about that should have been like. I won't go there. That's too complex. My point is the stuff that you all can impact is still things that you can impact, but you need to be aware of them, right? And don't. If any of you have ever followed Jacob Kolker, he runs AI2 in Seattle, so Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence. And Jacob's been on this kick of Seattle is great, episode 19. He keeps tagging me in it. And I love his enthusiasm for it because I still want to believe that because it's so easy for me to get caught up in some of the negative narrative as well. But it's why we're putting forward this 1,000, like we want to help 1,000 companies scale. If 10 of you here want to be in that group, we're leaning in. It doesn't cost you anything. We're not asking for equity. We're not asking for payment. We just know that that's our way. It's our flywheel in Washington State to support the next generation of founders. And that'll be true in Spokane. It'll be true in Bellevue. It'll be true in Bellingham. I don't know what'll happen with Seattle. They'll figure it out. We're there anyway, so we want to be there to support it, and that's what's important to me.
I think it's worth mentioning too. You can't save your way out of a debt problem. Right? You can't save your way out of it. You can't cut. I'm not a politician. I'm not running. No. But when we talk about these cuts and everything else, growth, the growth that this room represents, right? The 1,000 companies that you want to represent, that's the growth that we need, that needs to grow the economy, not shrink back from it. There isn't a way to kind of pull back and say, this shouldn't happen. I mean, that's what we do responsibly as we move forward. Yep. But we need to find things that are going to accelerate the economy and grow into it. So it means leaning into the headwinds.
I have a little unique perspective. So I just came home from a wedding event in Africa. It was country 51 for me. Now, some of you didn't grow up in Washougal. But 51 countries for a kid from Washougal, I think, is a pretty good mark, right? And I'm super thankful about it. I'm super blessed to have been able to do it. But the reason I bring it up is because here's my observation as I've gone to all of these other places. And by the way, 30 of those 51 have been for entrepreneurship related stuff. Cairo is trying to figure out how Washington State built Washington State, right? Tunisia has the same challenge. Like, there's these other places in the world, I think to your point earlier, we've forgotten that tech is actually good for this economy. And by the way, AI is the next generation of it. It's going to be completely disruptive. Are we going to have some awkward moments? Yes. Were there people taking care of horses that weren't super fans of my grandfather's auto shop? Yes. You know what? There's no more mechanics today than there were people taking care of horses. So I don't think the jobs are going to get vaporized. I don't know if I'm a techno-optimist or not. I'm just an optimist, right? So I kind of look at this and say, will we have an awkward transition stage? Absolutely. And if we don't figure it out, we'll have pitchforks and things will be bad. But I think we figured it out before, and I think we'll figure it out again, right? And it's you guys are being part of the solution. That's where we play as founders. It's not necessarily where we play as entrepreneurs, as employees, but it is where we play as entrepreneurs.
I just want to thank all of you for fighting the fight. I think what's lost in Olympia is I think that they think everybody gets into high tech and it's not a lot of hard work. You've been blessed with you're a millionaire now, so it just rained money on you. But having ran a business, this is hard work. And I think they forget that. And that they think, oh, you're a millionaire now, and so pay your fair share. Well, you've been paying all along. And some of you, I hate to tell you, might not succeed. I didn't succeed. I made great money for 15 years. And when the collapse hit me in 2008, it was miserable. And I started over again. But it's just really interesting that I just want to tell you thank you. This is hard work. It really is. And I think that's what's lost in Olympia. A lot of things is that, you're in high tech, it just, you know.
Or my favorite one is somebody's like, oh, I was a founder. I'm like, really? You had to make payroll?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no, I never had to make payroll. I'm like, then you weren't a freaking founder, right? Because if you've never, stared at the ceiling at night from your pillow and thought about how you're going to make payroll,
Man, is everything
right?
going
bunch
to
of
work?
business cards that said founder for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, and it's to your point. I don't think people understand, like, being a founder is an instant success, and all the work So a buddy of mine started a company that took 17 years before they IPO'd. You guys might have heard of, called DocuSign. Overnight success story.
Right, 17-year.
Right.
overnight.
So when he started it, it wasn't actually legal. It wasn't illegal. It just wasn't actually legal. Right. So yeah, our overnight success stories will be the future stories of the 1,000 we want to tell, and we want to tell your story. And so yeah, I agree. Thank you for what you're doing. This is my tribe. It's why I do what I do now, because it's like helping the next generation of entrepreneurs is my only request. Is because people are like, well, you don't charge for it with WTIA, and I'm like, nope, just pay it forward, because there's another generation. You're one chapter in front of that next generation, right? You know go to market better than you know it. You know product better than they know go to market. Like, you're here as a community to help each other. If you do that, your odds of success go up. If you go at this as a solo sport, the odds of success go down. It's simple math.
Yeah. I think,
the gloves off?
I was going to say, that's a great transition point. You guys been listening to a lot of this. I'd love to find out if you guys have questions. Ron, jump.
So to make it less esoteric, Dave, I'm really kind of curious about every one of the startups that you personally thought about and started.
Mm-hmm.
What was your thought process going in? Like, oh, this is a better, it's a better doorknob, so I can produce 1 million and scale up and quote. I mean, what were you thinking? What inspired you in each one of those? And then what inspired you to actually follow through and thinking you were on the right path?
Knowing what I know now, so of all of my, so the the new one I'm doing is more of a consulting services business, because it's tied to the book about exits, and using AI to help founders do that better. So the answer is, jury's still out, it's still too early, but it feels like a services business versus a product business, and I think they're different. So in the product side, it was fixing a problem that you saw. Then the question that most founders don't do, and me included, was, so there's a business model and a revenue. A business model has 3 components, right? There's the cost to build, it's creating value, and that there's a cost to build or a cost to deliver those services. So that's bucket number 1. Then there's the cost to sell it and support it, which is all about how much does it cost me to sell the customer and support the customer. And then there's the economics of the business, right, which is your financials. The first 2 have inputs, the last one does not. So I can control how much it costs me to build the product, right? I can use cheaper labor offshore, right? I'm not really in control of how much it costs me to sell the product, because the market dictates how much it costs me to sell it. But then my financials are my gross margin, my top level revenue, my net profit. I'm not in control of those. Those are outcomes of the first 2. Most of us as product founders find a problem we want to solve, but we don't ask the economic question of how do I make money, which is why I ended up writing the book about the 14 revenue models, because it was so frustrating to me that somebody would come to me and pitch me their company and why they wanted us to support them for $1 million. And I'm like, how are you going to make money? And they're like, we'll figure it out. And I'm like,
That's that delusion spectrum we're talking about.
I raised money in 1998 on my first company, and I built that first company from 0 to 32 million in sales in 4 years.
What did that company do?
We were a software distributor. We were a specialty software distributor that did electronic licenses. So we found a solution to a problem where nobody wanted to sell the product, and it was really hard. In retrospect, would I have started that company? No, the economics in that business were really tough. Low margins. Microsoft was dominant in the market. If anybody's been part of the Microsoft ecosystem for partners, it's a small P for partners, I'll tell you. But every business, take Uber as an example of Uber doing at one point they were talking about Uber Air, right? So Uber looked at the entire ecosystem and said, where can we make money? And everywhere else, we're going to give that to partners, right? And that's not unusual in big ecosystems.
But their original premise was a black car service in San Francisco.
Right, and it was San Francisco and New York only.
That's right.
You can find their original pitch deck, by the way, online. It's great.
Multiple pivots to grow that business. That the problem they were solving initially was not where they ended up getting their growth.
Yep. And in standard startup process, and I don't know why it is this, and sometimes competitors pop up because they heard about Uber, sometimes not. But Easy Taxi was a company that came through Startup Weekend out of Brazil and was one of our billion-dollar unicorn companies that came out of Brazil. And the answer was, same problem. It's raining and I can't get a cab. Why can't I use my phone to do this?
Right.
Right? So the idea was always around fixing problems. It ended up being a chapter I rewrote in the book because we did this as a seminar series 3 different times. And one of the things that came up was like, how do I know this is a good idea or not? And I actually put together 11 frameworks of what's a good idea and how do you know? Because for founders, we're on the delusional side. We're like, I fell in love with this problem and I'm going to go fix it, without asking the question of like, if I fix it, can I make any money? Because one of the startups I ran that wasn't successful was that, right? I'm a scoutmaster and Little League umpire, and we're doing fundraisers, and I'm like, every year I have to get a different parent to ask the same restaurants, why do we have to replicate? Can't we do this with software? And the answer was nobody was searching for donation automation software.
Right.
And though I could build the product, the companies wouldn't pay me the cost that it would cost me to sell the product. So that got into what are the economics, how does it work? Because if you're doing it for the first time, the answer is, by the way, there's 14 choices of your revenue model, just pick one, right? Are you going to develop a 15th? If you do, I will write about it because I'm a complete nerd. But the odds of you in the last 10 years of doing that are pretty low. So go innovate on the product, right? Don't innovate on revenue models. And by the way, the revenue models have different multiples. A services business, our CPA firm I was talking about, $1 million business there would sell for $1 million. A subscription business would sell for 8. Don't do the subscription business, not the services business, right? If you can, your customers won't always let you, but the idea there is, yeah, it's some of the businesses I wouldn't do now knowing what I know, but, and every once in a while I get an idea of doing another one, and my wife is like, really? We've been married 39 years next week, 39 years, so.
Well, and I think as a founder, you can define the first category, like you said, the product. I can see the problem, I can define the product. You can't define the market. And when you get into the market, sometimes you find out, no matter what you built, you're not going to change the market. Right? I did what most tech founders want to do. During COVID, I went and started a distillery. Everybody thought I was the coolest guy in the world. They're like, oh my God. Till I found out there's 2 companies that make money, InBev and Diageo, and everybody else loses money, but they get bragging rights to their friends that they're in the liquor business.
Yep.
You live in Woodinville.
Yep.
Everybody there is making a small fortune out of the big one that they brought to it.
Best way to make $1 million in the winery business is start with 4.
So, or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, yeah.
Sorry, other questions? Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
So I love your focus on product market fit. I love your focus on product market fit.
Thank you.
And everyone here, I'm sure, wants to get there. And statistically, it's not going to be 100%.
Sure.
Right? So how do you know when you're chasing an idea that's not going to get there?
So there's a proxy for product market fit, and that's meeting with customers, right? So if you haven't done, so when people would come to me and say, hey, we're looking for investment, I'd be like, how many potential customers have you talked to? And if it's less than 100, the answer is, I am not investing. Because something is completely in your control is going out and talking with customers. Now, one of the challenges for early startups is they're like, anybody could use my product. I'm like, that is so not true, right? So, and I would rather you have conviction about the customer niche we're going after is this customer niche, it's this wide, and I'd rather you come to me with conviction and say, this is our customer and we're gonna own this niche. And if that niche fails, I'm gonna own the adjacent niche or the adjacent niche, right? Because you don't have enough money as a founder to go after 3 niches or a broad market, right? You have to narrowly focus that ideal customer profile, and the value proposition to that ideal customer profile has to map, right? And by the way, let me repeat it. The value proposition to your ideal customer profile has to map, and they have to be willing to pay a price for it. So that was one of the other chapters I added was pricing, because people hadn't spent enough time talking about pricing, right? So how do I price this thing? So in that early stage, product market fit before you have product is how many customers have you talked to? What did they tell you, right? And by the way, the one that says, oh yeah, that's really awesome, a meh is bad.
Yeah.
That is a no, I'm not spending money. I'll give you a classic. A friend of mine started a company. They wanted to curate videos that would help parents expose their children to what career opportunities they want to have. Now, if you go ask parents, do you want to help your kids? Every parent will tell you, I am a great parent. I want to help my kids. Then when you ask them for a credit card number, their answer is, I don't want to pay for it. Right? So if you don't ask the question, what would you pay for this as well, you're getting exactly what you asked for, which is meh. And meh is a failure. Right? So you need to go out and actually talk to customers and ask them, cool, if I did that, how much would you pay for it?
I want to click on that as well, because we were walking in, you talked about the book Traction as we were walking by, right? They're saying 50% of time working on the product and 50% in the market, right? And saying as well.
I would flip that in these. So today, I mean, if you guys aren't using Claude Code yet, I would be like, go figure that one out, because I can write code way faster than I've ever been able to write code. It's amazing. I'm great at product requirement documents, right? Which is understanding what the customer wants and turning that into a product. If you haven't become great at that yet, that's the one thing you should be great at, right? Today, if I was going to spend $10,000, I would spend $10,000 on an ad campaign validating I could acquire customers for reasonable economics and send them to a checkout page and throw them an error message in a 404 that says, I'm sorry, we're only taking beta users right now and I can't take your order.
This goes back to, was it Casper?
Yeah.
That started out with that?
I wouldn't spend $1 on product, I would spend $10,000 on customer acquisition, and if I couldn't do customer acquisition at reasonable economics, I would not start the company. How's that for weird conviction after 85 investments?
It feels so boring. It's so dispassionate from the founder that says, look at this, what I've got. Look at this, and this wonderful. Yeah. But look what I made. And they just live and thrive in how beautiful what they built is.
My other favorite one is, will you sign my non-disclosure? The answer is abso-freaking-lutely not. So listen, ideas die from lack of exposure, not from overexposure. So, and I'll give Dan Shapiro the quote for that, because it's out. So ideas die from lack of exposure, not overexposure. You can go out, if we had the same idea today, sitting on the same couch and went after the same product, it would end up in 2 completely different places, because life experience and how we approach things would be totally different. So go out and talk to everybody about your idea, rather than being concerned that somebody's going to steal it. I heard somebody on Shark Tank one time say. The answer is that's not your concern. Your concern is lack of exposure. You have a question, you're burning with that, like, I'm scared.
I've been really struggling with this thought, this very thought. It's like, how much do you share during conversations with people? And
it depends on either. Yeah. Well, you don't have to give away your. So I've sold 20 plus companies, right? Almost all to strategic buyers, right? And if I sat down at a trade show and talked with my biggest competitor and just told them that what was on my website, they would be like, that's amazing, because they have never read the website, right? So am I telling them any secret sauce? No, right? But most often your buyer is going to be your strategic upmarket competitor or partner. So, don't give away the secret sauce, but you don't have to do that, right? I have had a friend who did that Salesforce came back and amazingly built a product that was similar. So the answer is don't give away the secret sauce. But at the stage you're at, the answer is that's not your risk.
There's a few people you don't want to get.
There's a lot.
Don't tell Amazon what you're working on. Either.
Amazon will look at 50 deals a year and never make a letter of intent. There's a reason for that. So there are people you want to no secret sauce.
Yeah, and I would also say, being a founder is running through the fear of what you're dealing with at any given moment, right? Nobody's saying the fear doesn't exist, but you have to get through it on the other side, right? And you can't gauge what it's like until you've done that, right? So don't be irresponsible and tell everybody, or the people that you believe are in the same market that you're competitive with or something else. But yeah, you've got to walk through that and start exposing it, because in the rest of the world,
your qualifying question is, are you my ideal customer profile or not? If you are, let me ask you these set of questions in a hierarchy that help me answer the question of whether you will buy this or not. So I have a good friend, I won't mention his name because in Seattle he's incredibly well known, but he's a mechanical engineer. So he'd show up at a trade show event and he's asking, are you my ideal customer profile questions? And the says, oh, okay. And he would just go to the next.
Turn and go to the next.
Right? Because it was like, I'm searching for my ideal customer profile. I need to know if you will buy this product or not. And if you're not my ideal customer profile, that's why it's called networking. We don't have a meaningful relationship now. We're not going to have a meaningful relationship tomorrow. So figure out who your ICP is and go nail that, because then you'll get the right answers, right? But that's where you have to be really narrow and thoughtful. And that gets to the question of when do you kill a bad idea, is if you go and talk to 10 or 20 of what you think your ideal customer profile is, and everybody's like, it's awesome. Then you're working on a bad idea. Right? If you can spend $1,000 and not get any customer interest running Google ads, if that's appropriate, it's a bad idea, right? So you have to be able to get customer interest that people are like, I will pay for that. So.
Yeah.
So you mentioned NDA and whatnot. When do you look in legal, for instance, when you talk to lawyers?
Yeah, so from an investor standpoint, you never do an NDA, because the answer is, so I was looking at 80 deals a month, right? And in 2 years, we did about 15 deals a year versus 900 deals that we looked at. I can't even remember those companies from 7 months ago or 17 months ago, right? So the idea is it's completely impractical to say, I'll sign an NDA and then I will never share an idea about this idea with somebody else. Right? So that's why VCs don't do it. The other is that we just generally look at it and say, if your idea is a big enough idea, like if we wanted to see the secret sauce and we were buying the company, yes, I'd sign an NDA. And I would still keep the secret sauce secret even in that case until the absolute bitter end. But if you're signing with a partner, right, NDA, non-disclosure, assignment agreements, super important. If you're going the direction of a letter of intent to sell the company, it's after the letter of intent stage and in the due diligence stage before final deal docs are done. But yeah, you don't really need to worry about it at the early stage, because the answer is you're going to pivot in 2 months anyway, or a year anyway. So focus on getting revenue and customer validation, because that's where you really prove your point out. I spent a lot of money on lawyers. I could have gone to college and got my degree a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to get customers and any of that validation by being secretive.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
Identical to what we're just trying to do. We're trying to expose it.
Yeah. Nobody gets excited when you bring your lawyer.
So many applications.
Anybody else? One more practical question about WTIA. The events coming. Well, I mean, this is maybe one of the events, right?
So one of the things I'll give you our aspiration. Well, I'll give you my aspiration, and I'm trying to convince the board it should be their aspiration as well. Yeah, I'm a broken record with them anyway. Which is, we want to be the front door of entrepreneurship in Washington State. Like, here's all the resources. Oh, you're in Vancouver, you should go here. Or you're in Spokane, you should talk to these people, right? So we want to be the front door of entrepreneurship there. And Amy just gave you your card so you can find it. Anyway, Washington Tech Industry, WashingtonTechnology.org is the website. But yeah, we want to be there for resources to help you navigate what I would call stage-appropriate resources, right? So do you need to know about company culture at this stage? You've already heard my opinion on that, right? There's a lot of vendors and partners. The ecosystem is made up of some interesting folks, right? Founders are Dave's target audience here. Service providers, some of you are service providers as well. We're glad you're here. You should be sponsors if you're service providers. I know that's a hard message, but the answer is, if you're coming to hanging out just to find customers and you're not sponsoring the event, you're not actually contributing to the community. Go get bigger and come back and sponsor the event, selling to people who have money, because founders don't. right? They're spending money trying to validate their ideas. And I don't mean that as a dig, please. It's the part of what makes the ecosystem work is we have sponsors, and sponsors typically, if you look at those logos, Perkins Coie knows they can meet with you one-on-one, but at $16.50 an hour for a deal attorney, you don't have a time to, you don't have that, right? So, yeah, I've used them a bunch. And I can, my career is set at this point that I can name names about just about everybody in the Washington State area, about who you want to work with and who you don't, which is why we do the cohort program. Because the cohort program was the thesis of, if you knew the ecosystem the way I knew it, you would avoid these things, and you would go to those things. Like you wouldn't go to Keiretsu Forum. I know every time the Keiretsu Forum hears me say that, they hate that. But there's a reason for that. If your deal's 80% funded and you need to close it out, totally makes sense. Should you pay to pitch at their event? No frickin' way, right? Because you should spend that money on advertising or getting a new customer, right? There's so many more important things for you to spend money on. So do they offer some good things? Yeah, I'm sure they do to some people. But in my community, that's not the value prop. Do they like that I said that? No. But do I care? No. Which is why I'm not going to be a politician. So it's fine, right?
We still don't have to care.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Well,
Still don't have to
the
care.
last session was kind of obvious, I guess I should say.
You don't have to care.
And I'll just add one thing, right? We've got a mixed audience of Oregon and Southwest Washington, and you notice nobody ever says Southwest Washington and Oregon, right? They always say, they're Portland, Southwest Washington. They always kind of be inclusive, and there is a real physical divide across the river where tax dollars cannot be spent over here, right? So organizationally, we are very, very different being over here. And part of the reason to reach out to Washington State and to WTIA is to start to get a little bit of that flex down here, right? Is we've been a drive-through area, and that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us with the growth we've been having and where we've been headed. And so part of these conversations that I've been working on, that we've been doing as an organization, is to really kind of say this is more Washington than it is Portland for these economic reasons, for these founders that are trying to build something. And I think that's...
We still need the same thing, right? You still need access to capital, you still need access to talent, you still need to find customers. Regardless of the stage of your company, all three of those things are still the same. Right. And that's why we want to be very focused on the state and working with, like I said, getting to 1,000 by 2035 means we need to work with the communities that want to work with us.
Yeah, and capital can cross the state. It doesn't.
Capital flows where it's wanted.
Where it's going.
My big message to Olympia this last session is capital goes where it's wanted. And
That's
if
right.
it's not wanted, it won't go there.
Yeah, and I think that also goes to a lot of what we talk about is we talk about this dearth of capital and that money is hard to get right now and everything else. For good ideas, build something worth investing in. Money will find you. Mm-hmm. Right? You shouldn't be chasing the money. You should be chasing your product, building something something viable and scalable. You need money to get along, but it almost it's cart before the horse in some respects.
Yeah, you won't be able to raise money in the market conditions we're in. Like when I did my first startup, it was back of the napkin idea. You could raise money. You can't do that anymore. Like you need traction, right? And traction requires customers and
defensibility.
Yep. So hopefully you can build that part over time, but at least in the early stage, go find revenue is your easiest thing to celebrate, or your best thing to celebrate.
All right. Any other questions? Don't be afraid to tell Olympia that they shouldn't be meddling in certain things, and I mean that sincerely. So we're messing with AI right now in Washington State, and I really believe it's a federal issue. The idea that we're going to have a patchwork throughout the United States of AI regulations is just really bizarre, and that Oregon's going to do something that's different than Washington. This really needs to be federally regulated. The state of Washington is going to get it wrong. I mean, to be quite frank with you, and so that should be a federal regulation. They'll probably get it wrong, but that's okay. It'll be wrong everywhere rather than just wrong in one spot.
At least you guys won't have to file taxes and compliance in 50 different states.
Absolutely. Compliance filings in 50 different states.
So don't be afraid to say that, because I think that's really important. I think sometimes Olympia would get involved in things that really should be federally regulated, and we're just going to cause a patchwork of mess, and it's not going to be easy for you or easy for anyone. Yeah.
Guys, this was absolutely wonderful. I literally, when we met and did this, and Senator Harris coming down at the very last minute, and
I had no choice. I'm a politician, remember, which is I have to come listen.
On the continuum.
Yes, on the just got it.
No, it was great. Like I said, we've been building something really special here, and to start to have you guys kind of add some fuel to that has just been wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Little parting gift. It's not much, but it
Thank
is
you.
something for
Love it.
for being here.
Notes for the next section.
Notes for the next section. There are T-shirts, and I guarantee they won't fit, but we did this.
That'll fit a grandkid.
There you go, product market fit, and I added timing because nobody ever talks about it. We always think it's product market fit, but maybe you're too early, and fixing early is not easy. All you can do is wait it. The other one just talks about kind of that ethos of what you want to do as a founder is ignite things and impact.
I can't take anything over $50. Is that $50?
If you count my design time, maybe.
Oh my gosh!
Not for the cost. Not for the cost of the shirt. Not for the cost of the shirt. So again, thank you so much for coming. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much. Good to meet you. Absolutely.
It's awesome. Thanks.
Good to meet you.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. Good to see you.